You know, when we think of the World Cup, we usually picture pristine pitches and flawless organization, right? But 1962, man, the tournament in Chile was just absolute mayhem from start to finish. But here's the crazy part. Out of all that unbelievable chaos came one of the most brilliant tactical adaptations in football history. In this explainer, we're going to dive into exactly why 1962 was pure tournament chaos and how one team literally weaponized unpredictability to conquer the world. Let's get into it.
To really grasp the genius we're about to look at, you gotta understand the environment first. This tournament was, quite literally, born in chaos. Just 2 years before kickoff, the host nation, Chile, was hit by a 9.5 magnitude earthquake. A 9.5. That's the most powerful ever recorded. It's a miracle they rebuilt in time. And on the pitch, things were just as wild. You had teams adopting that brutal European catenaccio, or dribbled, defense. We're talking police storming the field to break up fights, a literal stray dog interrupting a quarterfinal match, and get this, a totally bizarre statistical anomaly where 6 different players tied for the Golden Boot. Just wild.
So just how dark did it actually get? Well, take the group stage match between Chile and Italy. It went down in history as the Battle of Santiago. The British press at the time called it the ugliest, most vicious, and disgraceful in soccer history. They were actually warning parents on TV to send their kids to bed before they showed the highlights. We saw 2 red cards and literal fists flying on the pitch. I mean, in a tournament that's supposed to showcase the beautiful game, the reality was incredibly violent and completely unstructured.
Right, so amidst all this violence and sheer unpredictability, the reigning champs, Brazil, are suddenly staring down the ultimate crisis. It's only their second group match against Czechoslovakia, and their 21-year-old superstar, the one and only Pelé, tears a thigh muscle trying a long-range shot. And remember, no substitutes back then, so Pelé just has to hobble out on the wing for the rest of the game, and just like that, his tournament is over. So what happens when the biggest sporting event on earth loses its absolute greatest player? Total, utter panic.
The tactical nightmare for Brazil was pretty much instant. Look at the left side here. This is their famous 4-2-4 system, the one that won them the '58 World Cup. It was perfectly symmetrical, completely devastating, but it totally relied on Pelé acting as a central pivot, dropping deep to link the midfield and the attack. Now look at the right side. Without Pelé, the whole 4-2-4 system just shatters. It becomes this flat, completely predictable line. Suddenly your forwards are isolated, the midfield is disconnected, and you've got this massive gaping hole right in the center of the pitch.
So the big question is, how did Brazil respond? Because Coach Aimoré Moreira, he didn't just plug in a bench player and cross his fingers. No, he completely re-engineered the whole system. As you can see, Moreira completely abandoned the beautiful symmetry of the 4-2-4. Instead, he told his left winger, Mario Zagallo, to tuck inside and basically become a third central midfielder. This was brilliant. It essentially created a lopsided, superfluid 4-3-3 whenever Brazil had the ball, fixing that huge hole in the middle. But by doing that, he left the entire right flank wide open. Why on earth would he do that?
Well, Moreira took a massive gamble. By shifting Zagallo over, Brazil's created this huge overload in the central midfield, giving them 3 players in there for defensive stability and ball control. But by intentionally leaving that left wing totally empty, Moreira cleared out the entire right side of the pitch for one specific player, to just isolate defenders one-on-one. He basically handed the keys to the kingdom to Mane Garrincha.
Now, if you don't know Garrincha's story, it literally defies all logic. He was born with a deformed spine, his right leg bent outwards, and his left leg was 6 centimeters shorter and curved inwards. Doctors straight up predicted he would never be able to walk properly, let alone play professional sports at the highest level. But incredibly, these exact physical anomalies gave him this completely unpredictable center of gravity. It made him arguably the most devastating dribbler the game has ever seen.
The biographer Rui Castro really hit the nail on the head here. He noted that Garrincha played the game in a wild and ludic state. Growing up in the small town of Pau Grande with indigenous roots, Garrincha he didn't care about the rigid, violent tactics Europe was pushing. He was totally indomitable. He grew up playing barefoot in the forest, and he brought that exact same untamed, joyful energy straight to the biggest stage in the world, basically mocking the rigid systems trying to shut him down.
And this right here is what sparked a full-on tactical revolution. Look at the typical 1960s winger on the left, hugging the touchline, racing to the corner flag, crossing the ball. Pretty standard stuff, right? But under Moreira's new asymmetrical system on the right, Garrincha was completely transformed. Freed from defensive duties, he turned into an inverted playmaker. He was operating in the half spaces, you know those super dangerous gaps between the fullback and the center back? So he wasn't just crossing, he was cutting inside, letting off long-range shots, and becoming the team's main goal threat.
While the rest of the tournament was just bogged down in these vicious fouls and boring defensive stalemates, Garrincha was out there putting on an absolute clinic. The Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano captured it so perfectly, saying, "The pitch was a circus ring, the ball a tamed animal. People almost died laughing." Seriously, he would beat a defender, wait for them to catch up, and then beat them again, just for the sheer fun of it. In a tournament defined by really ugly chaos, Garrincha brought this poetic, joyful kind of chaos.
But the chaos wasn't just on the ball. It followed him everywhere off the pitch, too. Look at this knockout run. In the quarterfinal against England, he scores 2 goals and then literally adopts that stray dog that invaded the pitch because, as he put it, it dribbled like him. I mean, you can't make this up. Then, semifinal against Chile, scores 2 more, but finally snaps from getting fouled all game, knees a guy, and gets a red card. As he's walking off, someone throws a rock from the stands and hits him in the head. Then, through some intense political lobbying, his red card ban gets miraculously overturned, and he ends up playing the final, running a fever, and completely hopped up on aspirin. Absolute madness.
4. That is the number of crucial goals Garrincha scored in just the quarterfinal and semifinal matches alone. When Brazil's perfectly structured system collapsed after Pelé went down, Garrincha just stepped right into that void and single-handedly carried the offensive load when they needed him absolutely the most. And of course, in true 1962 fashion, even the stats were a mess. A record-breaking 6 different players tied for the Golden Boot Award with 4 goals each, including Garrincha's own teammate, Vavá. It's just a hilarious reminder of exactly how decentralized, unstructured, and wildly unpredictable this specific World Cup was from day one.
Now, we really can't talk about Garrincha's wild success without giving a huge shout out to the structure that actually allowed it to happen. The true unsung heroes of this explainer are Didi and Zito, Brazil's absolute engine in the midfield. Because while Garrincha was out there causing total chaos on the right, Didi was playing as the deep playmaker, flawlessly dictating the tempo. Meanwhile, Zito was the tireless enforcer, just constantly winning the ball back. They managed the transition phases perfectly, providing the vital stability that kept Moreira's lopsided, asymmetrical experiment from just completely collapsing.
So what's the big takeaway we can pull from all these sources? It really comes down to this: systemic flexibility over individual reliance. When Brazil lost the greatest player on the planet, they didn't try to force a square peg into a round hole. They didn't stubbornly stick to their 4-2-4. Instead, they adapted their entire structure to protect their new weaknesses and completely maximize their remaining, highly unorthodox strengths. They basically proved once and for all that a fluid system is infinitely more resilient than a rigid one.
And look, this isn't just some dusty football history. This is literally a blueprint used today. Modern youth academies all over the world are moving away from rigid robotic formations. Instead, they're teaching kids how to create overloads, how to understand spatial balance just like Zagallo did, and crucially, they are fostering that one-on-one creative autonomy that made Garrincha so incredibly lethal. They're basically teaching the next generation how to solve chaotic problems on the fly.
Brazil faced a total systemic collapse on the world's biggest stage, literally surrounded by physical and tactical earthquakes. And their solution? Embrace the asymmetry and let their most unpredictable element roam completely free. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. How can you apply asymmetric thinking and structural flexibility to solve crises in your own life or organization? When your primary system inevitably breaks down, are you going to stay rigid or do you adapt to the chaos? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a fascinating new way to look at structure and creativity.